This evening, we gather to celebrate such a work that invites us to reflect change, the political, social and intellectual currents that continue to shape our societies and wider world. My pleasure to guide you through this evening's program as we celebrate the launch of Winds of Change, Geopolitics at the Crossroads of South and Southeast Asia by Asanga Abeyagoonasekera.
Appraising how India and China project power at home and abroad, Asanga Abeyagoonasekera argues that a strategy of building influence will prevail over one of seizing influence. For those who read between the lines, the implications of this argument and observation cannot be clear enough, whatever the country may be. More importantly, Abeyagoonasekera questions whether it is wise and whether it makes sense to build up power abroad by aligning with superpowers and global powers whose foreign relations have suffered a near total rupture because of domestic convulsions. Abeyagoonasekera observes that the only sustainable solution is to look at ways of achieving a synergy closer to home. When these solutions are clear and present in our neighborhood, the problem becomes easier to resolve. What Asanga Abeyagoonasekera tries to do in his book is to make us think of an order in which solutions are based on domestic and regional priorities and not on the priorities of others. These priorities can be many things at the same time: democratic governance, economic prosperity, foreign trade, and domestic production. Some may argue that this is an insular policy. It doesn't have to. To quote Abeyagoonasekera, the world order is shifting, the certainties of the past are crumbling. End quote.
සංග මට මේ කතාව කරන්න කිව්වයන් පස්සේ මම බොහොම සතුටින් ඒක බාරගත්තා. මොකද මම හිතන්නේ මේ අසංගගේ පොත මේ අවස්ථාවේ ලියන්න පුළුවන් සහ ලිවිය යුතු හොඳම පොතක් හැටියට මම මේ දකින්නේ. එහෙනම් මම කියන්නේ කාරණා දෙකක් මත. එකක් තමයි දැන් පහුගිය අවුරුදු 10 තුල ලෝකයේ සහ ආසියානු කලාපයේ ලොකු වෙනස්කම් ගොඩක් සිද්ධ වුණා. ඒක ඇත්තටම ටක් ගාලා වෙනවා. ඒ වෙනස්කම් කොච්චර ඉක්මනින් වෙනවද කියනවා නම් මම කියන්නේ දැන් මේ අපි හැමෝම මෙතන ඉන්නේ මේ දේශපාලනේ භූදේශපාලනේ ගැන උනන්දුවක් තියෙන අයනේ. නමුත් දැන් අපිට හරි මතක නැහැ. ඒ තරම් ඉක්මනට වැඩ වෙනවා. කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය මිනිස්සුන්ට කොහොමදත් මේ ගිය අවුරුද්දේ උනේවා මතක නැහැ. දැන් ඒ වගේ තත්වයක් තුල අසංග ඒ ගිය අවුරුදු 7 8 10 තුල ලෝකයේ සිදුවන ප්‍රවණතා, ආසියාවේ වෙන ප්‍රවණතා සහ ඒවා ලංකාවට කොහොමද බලපාන්නේ කියන එක පොලිකම් කරලා ડોකියුමන්ට් කරලා තියෙනවා.
When I was writing this, the war had started. And the war has just got more and more horrendous. One of the reasons I liked Asanga's book so much is that, like me, he tends to drop into literary and cultural discourse. Not very deep, because he's probably deeper than me. I tend to be superficial on that. But he starts with an account of Cambodia, Angkor Wat, a place that made a massive impression of me when I first saw it 35 years ago. And I think it had the same impact on him. Just read a little bit from this analysis of this very comprehensive book. Asanga talks about the shifting alliances. And they're not really shifting because there are no actual breaks in a context in which the three contestants for power who are threatening similar countries diplomatically, but definitely. The area is now called the Indo-Pacific, a term coined, interesting enough, over 100 years ago by a German who wanted to challenge the Anglo-American hegemony that triumphed after the First World War. The Anglo-American hegemony, which some of you may remember, completely betrayed the Arabs when the Arabs who had fought against the Ottoman Empire were then divided up by the French and the British. But it gained currency more recently following a speech by the hawkish Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was instrumental in developing the Quad: Japan, India, the United States, and Australia. And this marked a radical change in Indian foreign policy, for it had prided itself previously on being non-aligned. and the West saw it as too close to the Soviet Union and then to Russia. But as Asanga reiterates, India's approach is governed now by nervousness about China, which in the last couple of decades has made deep inroads into the Indian Ocean. Long after the concept of Indo-Pacific was developed, China saw this word and thought, all right, let's go for it. And they went for it.
Asanga says, geography may shape a country's circumstances, but governance determines whether geography becomes a liability or an opportunity. This observation goes to the heart of Sri Lanka's situation and the choices that we also must make. We cannot change our geography. We sit at the center of the Indian Ocean sea lanes. Asanga also reminds us in his book that Sri Lanka sits at a strategic intersection of the Indian Ocean. He notes that the geopolitical competition in this region is intensifying, and countries like ours are increasingly finding ourselves caught between different pressures. But the book also makes an important point about how small countries should respond to this situation. He says, for smaller states, international law is not an abstract principle. It is often their only protection. Winds of Change reminds us that our relationship with India is central. As the book puts it, India's proximity is a permanent factor of Sri Lanka's strategic environment. If Sri Lanka wishes to stand in the international arena as a country that supports humanitarian principles and the rule of law, we must also apply this within our own country. In fact, Winds of Change, Asanga captures this idea very well when he says, a nation's moral authority abroad is strengthened by the justice it practices at home.
මම හිතන්නේ ප්‍රථමයෙන් මා ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙනවා මේ මගේ පොත විශ්ලේෂණය කරපු ආචාර්ය දෙහාම් පෙරේරා රාජීව විජේසිංහ සහ මා හිතවත් රතින්ද්‍ර පුරුවිට සහ උදිත දේවප්‍රිය මේ පොතේ ඇක්නොලෙජ්මන්ට් එක කියන්නේ ප්‍රථමයෙන් තියෙන්නේ මම විසින් මේ පොත කරන්න මට උපකාර ආධාර පිරිස මේ රටවල් ගණනාවක් ඒ ස්ලයිඩ් එකේ තිබෙනවා. ඒ රටවල් වල පුද්ගලයන් තමයි මේ ව්‍යාපෘතියට මුදල් දුන්නේ. ඩොලර් 15000ක් විතර මේ පොතට මම එකතු කරා. වසර 3ක කාලයක් තිස්සේ ඒක GoFundMe. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ හැම දෙයක්ම ට්‍රාන්ස්පරන්ට්ලි ඒ දුන්න උදවියගේ නමුත් තියෙනවා. මට විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් මුදල් ලැබුණේ මගේම මිත්‍රයෙක් දැන් ඔස්ට්‍රේලියාවේ ඉන්න පෝසත්ම පුද්ගලයාලා ශ්‍රී ලාංකිකයෙක්. ඔහි මමයි විශ්වවිද්‍යාලේ යන කාලේ අපි දෙන්න එක බිල්ඩිමක් මේ part time ටීම් කරා. ඔහුගේ නම රොෂ් ගාල්ලගේ. මේ කවය තමයි දැන් අතරම මේ මම බැලුවේ ඔය භූදේශපාලන දැන් මේ පොතේ මගේ ලිමිටේෂන් එක තියෙන මේ කවය ඒකට කියන්නේ වැලිඩිටි සර්කල් කියලා. ඔය සර්කල් එක ඩැනික්වා ලික්වාන්යු යුනිවර්සිටි එකේ ප්‍රොෆෙසර් කෙනෙක් තමයි ප්‍රචලිත කරන්නේ. ඒකේ ඔහු කියන්නේ ලෝකයේ ජීවත් වෙන ජනගහනයේ හරි අඩක් කියන්නේ 4.2 බිලියන ජීවත් වෙන්නේ මේ කවයේ ඇතුළත කියලා. චීනය සහ ඉන්දියාව, ඉන්දුනීසියාව, බංග්ලාදේශ මේ කවයේ ඇතුළත. ඉතින් ඇත්තටම ගත්තොත් මේක තමයි දැන් මගේ මේ රිසර්ච් එකේ සීමාව. ඔය පරාසය ඇතුළත තමයි දැන් චීනයට මම ගියා, ඉන්දියාව ඒ වගේම ගිහිල්ලා මේ උතන තමයි මම ඩේටා ටික කැප්චර් කරගත්තේ. මේගොල්ලෝ කොහොමද මේ බල මේ කියන්නේ මේ විශාල බල අරගලේ දකින්න කියලා. ඔය තුන්වෙනි පරිච්ඡේදයේ තමයි බල අරගලේ. ඒක power rivalries කියන එක. So I have referred to many historical notes, starting from Nicholas Spikeman, 1944, basically the Rimland theory. Also mentioned about Rudolf Schellen, another geopolitical thinker, about the Sweden. Now, when Sweden came into the NATO as the 32nd member everybody was, cheering up. In Washington, everybody is like, oh wow, we have another member, and we are getting stronger and stronger. Then my desk, I had an issue because they said, does blocks get stronger when you get new members? So I refer to Rudolf Schellen. Now, Schellen is a very interesting geopolitical thinker, and how when a power block gets, increases, and what kind of a security threat that you bring in, a nuclear, possibly a nuclear. So I even speak about that. So more blocks you bring in, more you push Russia out of that periphery. So the Baltic periphery, which is a danger. So that's a significant danger. So it's a very strange, Washington that I find very strange. So at the beginning of the Ukraine war, so I remember everybody saying we are going for total victory. And everybody was cheering. At the National Press Club, there was a meeting where the Ukrainian soldiers came to get the Patriot batteries. And they come to lobby and they try to get the military equipment. So they come to Press Club and I get an invitation to listen to them. So I said, we are going for total victory. And obviously, there's never been a total victory against Russia. There's never in the history. So now it's a different story. So what I'm saying is, I think what Ratindra mentioned was absolutely correct. So it's changing. The dynamics are changing, like right now while we are talking.